Well, here we go. Just let me introduce myself. My name is Mike Derby. I'm CTO here at Avalan, and I think most folks here will tell me I'm just the Chief Talking Officer. Um, we're an 11-year-old company. We've sold about 70,000 plus radios over that 11 years. And obviously we're in the wireless market. We certainly welcome here today. This is a quick background here on, I suppose, some quick stats on who we are. All right, well, let me just give you an overview as to what we're going to be talking about. And these are the different lines that are on the right-hand side. We're just going to go through a wireless system design tool, a little bit about line of sight, site survey recommendations. Then we'll get into distances, topologies, bandwidth, actual power that's available, and just a real brief slide on what these kind of systems, on what professional grade systems typically cost. There we go. So one of the things we've done to really help folks out is we actually built with our marketing team a really nice wireless selector tool. It asks a bunch of questions that helps walk you through the different parameters for configuring and recommendations at the end as to what equipment would fit your needs. And we'll be talking about each of these 5 items across the next slides, but it actually queries you for, do you have line of sight, and shows a little image. Asks you if it's point-to-point or point-to-multi-point, and it can build through these different questions, and there's only really 4 questions in order to build you out, because the next one says what's the maximum distance, how much bandwidth, and how many IP clients are you connecting through the devices. With all that, it actually will kick you out a recommendation. Now, it's kind of trying its best to give you that information. The other thing we've got, I know this is a bit of an eye chart, but it's actually a document that we share with folks. It's just a wireless site survey checklist. It just runs through the basic 101s of what in the world are you installing, and that way when someone calls in for tech support, or the field guy goes out and collects the information, just makes for a nice checklist to make sure that everybody's on the same page as to how many cameras, what kind of are they TCP, or are we doing analog? And it's a great form and checklist just for when trying to spec out and calling into any manufacturer, just so the backgrounder is available so everybody can quickly get on the same page. All right, so line of sight or not, that was the first bullet. Line of sight when you're doing a video system is pretty much imperative. Given the data rates that are required, it's really going to be tricky to do an adequate job of performing a customer's requirements or meeting the requirements without a high data rate system. And the high data rate systems really do require line of sight. Now, the options for line of sight is really your 5 gig band, and that's great for most folks, for almost everybody. It does require obviously line of sight. It's very fast, and there are professional grade radios out there that can do more noise mitigation in case it's in a high density environment. There's radios that do a different protocol that's a bit less polite than Wi-Fi, where it's actually quite very powerful and is able to kind of dominate the fraction of the band that the radios are set to. Maybe it might not be as polite to do that. It's FCC legal. The Wi-Fi folks tend to just move elsewhere in the band, and it's a great way of just getting it done and providing that high quality service that a video customer might require. At 4.9, it's another terrific option if it's just a public safety, and there's a lot. Most video surveillance systems are providing benefits to property, equipment, and protection for people. So it's life, property, equipment. And 4.9 band was set aside by the FCC, and only 3% of the U.S. has actually gone in and requested a license. It's actually really easy. There's a full webinar with all the instructions. It's actually terrifically easy. We're here to help, and we offer 4.9 equipment. And like I said, private entities like universities and safety, as well as electric grid folks, can utilize the spectrum. They just have to work with a public entity like a police department or whatnot in order to work through them to use the band. But again, it's very easy to gain access, and the licensing is really quite straightforward. All right, 2.4, don't go there. Not for video surveillance system. Just don't do it. That's Wi-Fi loaded Bluetooth, just not a good choice. And the last option that is available for folks that do have non-line of sight, you got to go burning through some trees, or there's really just a lot of stuff in the way. And you can kind of see in the image right here where, 900 megahertz is a terrific band, but you can't go real quick. You're going to be less than a megabit per second, generally with noise and whatnot. You'll probably hit about 800, down to about 600, again, based on interference and what's in the way. And that's not super quick. It's kind of like a cellular uplink well, we'll talk about this. Quite effective at doing that for a single video streaming, which is basically a screen capture, but the video is being recorded remotely. 900 actually can get the job done pretty nicely with that, if that is a non-line of sight requirement for a job. So the next thing we require, or that we recommend, is some sort of site survey where you get out and you actually take a look at the site. You walk the site prior to bidding on things, or part of the bidding process. So you can see here, this is a site survey that a particular customer did. They went out, they looked at the different spots. You can see the Google Earth images they did to try and evaluate, and show their customer ranges, placements, line of sight assessments. The little dots on Google Earth are so helpful in calling in and trying to design a system and working with a pre-sales department for any vendor. It just really, really is a terrific way to help everybody get on the same page super quick and evaluate what kind of wireless system it will work and what kind of data rates you might need. If the opportunity warrants and it's large enough, you might actually go out and do a real site survey where you're actually looking at the spectrum. This is one of the spectrum analyzers that's built into one of our products, and it shows the noise environment. And the fellow there holding that's actually a spectrum analyzer, that's me when I was going out and supporting a customer that had a very critical installation. They wanted to make sure that it went well, so we helped them with some on-site work and their spectrum assessment that we did with a handheld spec in. And at the end of the report that was made here, you can see that they actually came together, the signal readings, blah, 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 classified as good, excellent, go ahead. And their recommendation was with some poll, I guess, to one site to go and deploy for that customer and go for it. So the different way of getting things done, the different, if you will, the different screwdrivers that are in the toolbox. You got screwdrivers, wrenches, you got the different wireless topologies that let you get different things, and it's just a matter of toolbox. There is no one size fits all. You can't bang things in with a wrench very well. So different kinds of gear is available. So backhaul solutions. I've got a slide for each of these, so I can just flip through them real quick, but it really is for fixed point-to-point connections, and it makes for a direct line. It's a direct phone call, if you will, back home. Multiple access, or stars as we like to call them, are optimized for a lot of simultaneous devices. You're going to lose a little range because that you've got generally an omnidirectional antenna, but it really is a party line, so that the data rate will be shared amongst the users, kind of like back in the day when I lived out in the country. The neighbors would actually be on the phone when you picked up, and you had to wait till they get off the phone so you can talk. And that's kind of the idea of multiple access. So everybody's got to kind of share, and that data rate gets distributed amongst the users on it. So then we've got a class of product called repeaters. These are different, I guess you'd say, than mesh. This is a new product that we'll be releasing soon. But repeater radios are good if you need to bounce data between nodes at shorter range, and it's quite effective for modest number of nodes. If you want to do video, as you see in the mesh bullet here, it says mesh systems are typically a poor choice for your video delivery. We've seen this. There's been a ton of tear-outs. We've helped support other customers who have had mesh that needed to go and reinvent their system because a fire tide or whatnot, that any number of them have failed, and they needed to do a tear-out, start over with a system that's going to get it done for them. So we really, really do pick on mesh pretty badly here. We've just seen too many folks just miserable with how things worked out. So we do generally offer repeaters type of mentality, or honest to goodness, 90+% of the time they call in and say, people call and say they need a mesh. It can be done with a star, and far more effectively with much greater success in order to use just a star. Mesh is not our recommendation here at Appalachian Wireless. The other thing that we're seeing folks do, and we love to support them with this, is cellular systems. And these are good for remote viewing of an on-site NVR. So if you're at the police station and you want to view that NVR, but one of the things that is a challenge, let me just state this with a little more data, is when you're trying to view that NVR over a cell modem, it's great if there's just not, if there's not a ton of people hammering on Verizon at the time. But much like when you're at a major football game or in a big venue, your cell phone, you just can't even get any data through. You can't barely get an email through, so you end up texting. Phone calls sometimes are difficult. In those situations, you're just using the cellular network, and there's really not going to be any preference to you, so your ability to view in a high-density environment is really going to be limited. Your NVR is going to be recording away, but your ability to access it is just going to be like your cell phone. It's going to be very difficult to get in those type of situations in order to dial in through your cell modem, no matter how fast it is. Doesn't matter if it's LTE or what have you. It's in those situations that you're aware of where your phone might not work. Just keep in mind that that a cellular uplink is going to have a similar challenge. Okay, so here's the quick pictures backhaul. I showed 3 of them here, so you actually have 3 concurrent backhauls all running at the same time. And the reason for this is that you've got multiple channels, right? And if you want maximum range to 3 remote stations from your police department, everybody gets a full data packet, full data rate in this situation because they don't have to share, they're just on a different channel. And you can do multiple point-to-point links from a single location to get that max range and maximum throughput that you might want to every one of the locations. Multi-point, we just mentioned, you've got multiple nodes coming back to a main head end. Data rates are going to be shared, and your range, obviously, because we now have this omnidirectional antenna that has to listen in all directions. It's not going to be quite as focused in any one direction, so it cuts back on the range. And we usually say 3 miles because you'll have, with at least our gear, you're always going to have a panel out in the field locations. And your Omni antenna is going to be collecting from the panel. If you end up with a multi-point where it's Omni to Omni to Omni to Omni to Omni or what have you, like a repeater system, you got to keep in mind that Omni to Omni is going to be a little shorter still. Mobile apps, which you can support, are going to be shorter still because you have motion involved, and there's a lot more work involved in a moving type scenario. But it is effective to get around different obstacles in case you really need something. But just realize there's a lot of data repetition, which cuts back on data rate. It just needs to be used, with caution. Here's your cellular viewing system, kind of in a nice picture format. So obviously we've got some remote location on the left. We've got some cameras coming into an access point. The access point is plugged into a remote viewing NVR. Sometimes these remote NVRs have a computer and keyboard. They really are basically PCs. And generally speaking, at the remote site, you should have a monitor there when you go to the site, so you can log in and you can actually get into the NVR, because it's going to be what's holding that huge amount of data. If that's what you're collecting from all those cameras, it's going to be the one that's got the terabytes type drive and is responsible for collecting it. And what we're trying to do with the cellular uplink here is we're trying to go over the internet through a cell tower to a cell modem, your LTE cell modem, which then connects to your NVR and gives you access to that screen. You're really not trying to push all the video from umpteen number of cameras. You're really just getting into the screen of that NVR, and then you can pull your 16 up and then look at any one of them. But because the resolution here is more modest and the screen sharing type things are quite good, you can actually have an excellent experience with an LTE or cellular type uplinks in order to do that remote viewing. It's very effective even in a PTZ scenario with some careful driving on potentially one singular PTZ camera that you might be looking at on the screen. So it's mirroring what's on the screen at the remote site, and you can, with care, drive a PTZ over the cellular all the way over here. You just got to have realistic time delays from when you say go left, and it actually goes left and feeds you the video. You just got, with a little care, absolutely work. Just be careful, like I said, of doing this scenario when you've got a profoundly busy And we also do have an antenna that can be attached to our cellular type gateways that'll give you even more distance so that it amps up, if you will, or gives better directionality to the power coming off of the remote cell modem. And that really gives an advantage. And here in the United States, we strongly, whenever somebody calls in, we strongly recommend Verizon for these kind of applications. And on our website, there's an entire paper that I wrote for an article for Remote Magazine. It's on the website, and it talks about some of the configuration mechanisms for doing an LTE or cellular type uplink and some things to consider. So if this is where you're going, it's a great way of doing it. Just with some expectation settings, it'll really get things done well for you. And one last idea, if you really are looking at the cellular, a great way of doing this, because often there's many people, the police, the fire, everybody wants to log into this NVR and overwhelm the data rate available on the LTE. There's ways quite easily where the remote monitor will shoot to a single viewing station over at the, through the cellular, and then what happens is everybody then logs into the viewing station over here at the police department. They're not trying to get in directly to the remote side. They're viewing on that high-speed, 100 megabit per second fiber link that the police department has, whatever. Everybody can then log into this computer, and it doesn't draw on the data rate requirements over the LTE. Everybody just shares it off here, and there's only one requirement, only one screen sharing link that needs to come back, and everybody gets to share it off that high-speed link. All right, so range versus throughput. This is a great question that we get all the time, is how fast do these things go, or how far can they go? And I don't want to say every, most wireless companies, I will actually say every, but because I don't have an example of anyone that doesn't, but all wireless companies say the same thing. They always tell you their maximum range, and they tell you your maximum throughput, and that's great, except you don't get both at the same time. In Avalan, we try to be very, very careful and reputable because we want your success. We want your repeat business, and it's important for customers' expectations to be set right and the design to work. So when a marketeer says it goes 30 miles, that doesn't mean it's going to go at max data rate. At 30 miles, you might drop down as low as 10 megabit per second, and if you have a lot of ambient RF noise, you may end up, on that long of a link. You need to be careful that your data rates don't get brought down a little bit. And additionally, because you're running such a long link, ambient noise might start kicking in. But luckily, this kind of thing is to be a point-to-point with high-gain directionals in order to achieve that, and that really does help isolate where you hear your noise. The 200, the big numbers that marketeers like, are usually at very modest range, and again, you'll get the high data rate, but you just got to really, really think shorter distances, right? And it varies right down as you go a little further. 1,000 foot, a mile, 3 miles, all of that scales right down to the longest range at the most modest data rate. When you do a site visit, we'd love it from helping out. If you can bring a camera with you, bring your cell phone camera, bring out the cheapest camera you want, but a camera on site is so helpful when helping a customer to spec it. And we really, that site survey analysis that I showed before, customers love this. You plot your points on Google Earth, you send it over, and it's so helpful, right? And for those large deployments, getting a spec in out there is a great way of doing it. We actually have some that we'll share if you're doing the 900, if you're doing the upper 5.8. We've got some units that we're more than happy to share with you on a pre-sales basis, and we like to get them back when you get done. But they're units you can go out and actually perform an RF assessment, and in the larger deployments, that's a great way to make sure that that it's going to go smoothly. All right. One of the next ones is has always been a challenge, which is what are the actual video requirements you really need, and they're going up and up and up and up and up as the cameras keep evolving with larger and larger sensors. And the challenge that is going to happen is you're really not going to get much more data rate from radios. There just isn't really anything I know of on the horizon that's really going to give you much more data rate than we're squeezing out of this available spectrum right now. It's some pretty sophisticated radios with this fancy modulation and the MIMO interfaces. At some point, the cameras will go faster than the wireless can keep up with, And with some of these super megapixel, 29 megapixels, the largest I've seen yet, you can get some really obnoxiously large data rate requirements. But here's the thing. Most human beings can't get in and off a site and steal anything in under a second. So, I mean, I can't even imagine what you would do in 1 second. If you do 2 frames per second and you have nice, clear 29 megapixel images or even HD images, the clarity on the cameras is awesome nowadays. So 2 frames per second, really, I can't imagine a human being in under half a second can drive through or can do much material damage and without that kind of camera catching a good facial shot or whatnot. 30 frames per second it gets really, really hard for the data rates and the image quality these cameras can kick out. Even for a wired infrastructure, it can really pound on a 100 base T network, and then you need fiber or gigabit. It can get super expensive. Just the data these things can kick out is just incredible. So try and keep it realistic, and it'll help the wireless system and all folks involved on the network to really get things done. Here you go. Network bottlenecks in the system. Are you really running this on a 10, 100, gigabit? Remember, Cat5 cable, the longer you go, it will downshift even if you have a gigabit. I've got a gigabit switch on both ends, and you got 100 foot of cable. Unless that cable's Cat6 and it's properly, it's a shielded Cat6 cable. Okay, you'll still get gigabit, but even with a really good cable at 300 foot, I know it's gigabits advertising you go that far, but I'm telling you, it's going to try and drop to 100 most of the time, and your data rates are going to be a lot less if the cable itself is your limiting factor. So just thinking when you do a deployment, when you do design, think your gigabit links shielded Cat6, and think 50 feet is a nice number to really ensure you're doing gigabit through the to the radio device or to the camera for that matter. Obviously 100 base T, you can get away with a lot less sophistication on your cable. You can use pretty cheap stuff, and 100 will connect. And if you get crazy, 10 base T, it'll downshift to that, and you can actually do about hundreds of feet on 10 base T. If it downshifts that far, you'd be shocked how far you can get 10 base T to go on a regular Cat5 cable, and even further on a nice, quiet, shielded Cat6 cable. I've seen well over 1,000 feet with a 10 base T link. No kidding. And that's still pretty quick. So, and then you've got your uplink is quite often a bottleneck if you're using a cable modem, cell modem, satellite. We've seen folks push satellite, DSL, T1 type links. The satellite was pushing to an FTP such that it would slowly chug images off to an FTP drive, and everybody could then log into the FTP drive, and that's how they were able to view this remote dam over a satellite uplink. Okay, careful of my time. I got 6 minutes left. Okay, power sources. It's so often that folks are like, they didn't think about how they're going to power it at the site. So always think in mind. Now, there's a lot of systems out there that might be voltage or battery already available. Often those are at 24 volts or 24 volts. AC is real common. Those can always be converted to a DC. You might have mains power. You might even have 240 AC. All of the mains power numbers are quite easy to convert to the DC with either a wall wart or a little converter. But it's important to really think through how you're going to put power to the camera at that spot. I mean, we're making it wireless, but there's no such thing as wireless power yet. Not totally true, but the military, we're not going to go there. There's no wireless power. Unless, if you want to do wireless power, you have solar, you have wind. And those are both very effective ways of getting, we could call it wireless power, but it really is just a remote power generation mechanism. And we've seen folks be very successful. The current draw on these modern systems, on the modern radio systems, can be 10 watts on a full transmit basis, maybe a little bit more if you're hitting it really, really hard. But that's you can do a moderate sized solar system for without spending a ton of money and be able to power that kind of stuff. We sell a solar system that's able to support folks for powering a radio or powering a radio and maybe one camera type of system. At the end of the day, it's super expensive if you're trying to do a truck roll every year or every 9 months to go and replace a radio that's really not in the professional grade market. There's a lot of cheap stuff out there, no doubt, and it's cheap, but most folks will say it's about $1,500 to get your bucket truck and 2 guys out there just to change out an $89 radio. It adds up quick, and a single professional grade product can easily have a 5-year service life out there, and you just never need to go and babysit it. It's designed to be hardened, watertight, and truly designed for that install once, and the thing just kills it and works over and over again. For 5-year service life is well within expectation of an industrial grade radio, and there really are products available out there, in the 750 and up range for the professional grade watertight type of gear. All right, I think I hit most of the topics I was hoping to cover through. Are there questions that anybody might have about how their system might be deployed, or things that might be of interest to them? Well, I sure appreciate everybody's time today. If there's any pre-sales questions, post-sales questions, just questions in general, always feel free to call in. We really are happy to answer any type of question, and we really pride ourselves on earning customers' trust and getting it such that they're successful not just on the first installation, but on the second one, the third one, and we've got a fantastic